Riverside. Powered by Riverside.
So I know last time we talked about recovery, and a lot of athletes listened to that one. Even matter of fact, some of them even used it, like Eric Murphy. He used it, and ended up winning his last show. He saw a big difference. So, Nick, this today you watered our mouth a little bit when you talk about the pump a little bit. You said, well, that's another topic. So now you got our mouth water. Everybody want to know about the pump. Tell us about the pump.
Thanks for having me again today. And I saw Murph's victory. I personally congratulated him. I'm glad some of those recovery tips can help. And I mean, guys, that's why Ernest and myself are doing these things. Please take these, topics into consideration, implement those into your prep and daily life. I wouldn't say anything that's not beneficial. We take the Hippocratic Oath for a reason. Everything we say is to only help. So I'm glad to hear Murph, some of the other top level guys and gals are out there using those recovery secrets. And now we get to talk about the pump, right? So, as Arnold has some great quotes about the pump, which I won't say, he thinks getting a pump is better than certain other feelings in life, which I'm sure many of you guys and girls think so. But let's talk about the pump in the gym, and let's talk about the pump backstage and kind of what we can use to get to that level. So first and foremost, what is the pump, right? Basically, the goal is to create nitric oxide production so you can dilate your blood vessels to get more blood and oxygen to that muscle. Hence, it looks larger than it actually is because it's full of the amount of blood and nutrients that you need to get those things stimulated, for lack of a better term, right? So we can get there many ways, right? So let's not talk supplements first. Everybody immediately thinks supplements. In fact, drop sets and supersets can help you get to that level of pump. Professional bodybuilders that they call it a pre-exhaustion, right? So they actually start their workout with a superset just because they know that superset will get them the pump, which helps stimulate nitric oxide production. Therefore, they can go have that blood flow, and that blood is already in those muscles with the nutrients. So then they can go and complete their workout at a higher level. We've seen many athletes do that. I'm one that does implement that in the off season. So I love pre-workout, not supplement, but pre-workout superset or drop set to really put that muscle under tension to get that blood flow there, right? So that's one quick way in the gym. If you don't want to buy supplements, if you don't have the money to buy supplements, if supplementation is not for you, if you're allergic to any ingredients for whatever reason, a drop set and superset has been shown to be just as good as what I'm about to tell you from a supplement. About supplements, and then Ernest, I can talk about natural ways and then some things we can do backstage. So I get this question a ton, okay? Like, hey, what supplement do you recommend on the market for me to get a pump or pre-workout? Okay, so first and foremost, I always say these few things. There's a difference between a pre-workout supplement and a pump supplement. Pre-workout over here, because today we're talking about pump supplements. So 3 things I always look for, okay? First is, what's your price range, guys, okay? Please don't go spend $70 on a pump formula if you can't do that. Secondarily, is it third-party tested? You see those logos on there that it has been tested by the USP or somebody else, so it proves what you're buying is actually in that tub of powder. And third, the big word to watch out for is proprietary blend, okay? What this is to me is literally, as a pharmacist, this is a blend of shit, right? The doses are not correct. I have no idea who came up with this. It may have been a world-renowned scientist, but it's not on the logo. Usually it's just crap product, and it may have the right ingredients, but not the right doses, guys, okay? So just like in pharmacy, if I give you a pill and it's the wrong dose, it's not going to work. Okay. We have to give you the right dose. It's exactly the same in the supplement world. Okay. So there's 3 ingredients to look for. So I actually don't care what product you buy. I am a sponsored athlete from a supplement company, so I prefer their products. That's why I selected that. But I would always look for 3 ingredients. First is citrulline, second is arginine, third is bentine. Okay, those 3 products. Now it's real simple, and I will put this up in a little post later today so you guys can have it. Okay, the dose for citrulline is 6 to 8 grams. Okay, the dose for arginine is 3 to 6 grams, and 5 grams. Okay, so those are just your 3 products you want to find in those ranges, because that is usually the correct dose for here nor there based off of your body weight. Okay, so again, sertraline, arginine, bentine. Okay, and then I'll put those doses up later as I just went over. So as long as the product is in your price range and has those 3 ingredients in it, Ernest, that's going to help you increase your nitric oxide production. Okay, so then if you take these products 30 to 45 minutes before you work out, and then you start with a superset, and then you get your workout, you better get your camera ready, because you're going to have one of the best fucking pumps in your life. Okay, and you're going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So those are not secret ingredients. Those should be in all of your products, guys. As long as you're not allergic to any of those are the doses. We'll get those on the post later today. But those would be my 3 key ingredients.
Now, how long does a pump last? Like people, when they about to get on stage, they all try to get pumped. But then, like, things may happen. Like Showtime, one of the shows Showtime was in, he's about to get on stage, and then they had a 5-minute break. So then he's like, oh man, and he already pumped. How long does a pump last? Like the fullest you are when you pump, when you get on stage, how long does that usually last?
It lasts is different for everybody, and it also depends on what you have in your body, right? And we'll talk about some of those ingredients here in a minute. So from a time frame perspective, you can usually expect your pump to last, let's just say post-workout. Say you complete a 60-minute workout, you'll stay pumped for about 15 to 20 minutes after, because the blood flow is decreasing because your heart rate is decreasing. So as long as you're keeping that heart rate up and the nitric oxide production going, you can keep that pump. It may not feel like it. Remember, initially you can feel the pump because you have an increase of blood flow, but your body gets used to that amount of blood flow in that muscle, so then you don't feel it anymore, right? So even if you're not feeling the pump, you are still actually visibly pumped. So I would easily say 15 to 20 minute post workout. So that gets us into kind of the backstage conversation. Okay. Now, everything I said before with drop sets, supersets, and supplementation, there's one thing that's more important than all of those. That's carbohydrates. Okay. If you're not feeding the muscle, guys, you're not going to get a pump. Okay. So bodybuilding is different. Depending on what your coaches or yourself do, some people load carbohydrates before the stage. Some people cut carbohydrates before the stage, depending on your body, right? So how long should you pump backstage beforehand? Depends how much food is in your system. For Showtime, for example, right? What we do with him is we get him pumped backstage. He's eating carbs before we start the pump, so he can have some dry carbohydrates to help fill him up, and he can process those relatively quickly. And then again, you want to make sure that you're pumped before you go on stage, right? That's the key, is you don't want to be flat on stage. So a lot of times you'll see people do numerous things backstage. So let's talk about those. Carbs is the most important, guys. Okay. You see people eating rice cakes. I'm a fan of that. You see people taking carb powder, right? Carbolin, Vitargo, those products are out there. Literally, guys, no secret there. It's literally just carbohydrates in a powder form. So it's a rice cake in powder, basically. Okay. You see people eating mashed sweet potatoes. So whatever carbohydrate your body can digest, that's the key. You can't go on stage digesting this food. You could bloat, right? You could spill over. And that's up to you and your coach when it comes to the amount of carbohydrates and grams that you guys are comfortable with. Okay. Secondarily, what do you see? And this is one I like. Okay. Resveratrol. Basically, it's red wine. Okay. I'm a big advocate for red wine. Okay, backstage in small amounts. That does have the ability to increase nitric oxide production. It's clinically proven. So that is basically a pump formula. And then also what it can do is it can help dry you out. So we see it'll help pull a little bit of extra water So we've seen red wine backstage. I am actually an advocate for it, guys. Please don't drink a full glass of red wine. You'll be hammered. You're dehydrated. I mean, this is literally maybe 2 ounces at a sip based off of your tolerance. Okay. And it is sips, and you can make sure you don't chug it because you don't want to burp for those reasons that you could have some bloating backstage. Now, another thing I like naturally that people do backstage is beet juice or beets, right? You see them eating on beets. Beets is another natural way, just like resveratrol and red wine, to increase nitric oxide production and help get you that pump. So I do see is guys throwing down pre-workout. Pre-workout is a stimulant most of the time. God knows what's in half of these products, no matter how great we think they are. A lot of them are proprietary blends. And I just can't control that from your body, right? Because I don't know what's going in there in that proprietary blend. So a lot of times I know guys take pre-workout to get a pump and it makes them mentally focused. Keep doing it if it works for you. It's just something I don't personally do or recommend to my team because there's so many variables there that can throw your body off that I don't know. I like to control my situation backstage to ensure everything in my body, I can check the box to make sure it's perfect without any variables I don't know.
Nice. Because I know, like, before I get on stage, I use carboline. But I use like dry powder. I don't mix with anything. So like strictly dry, and then I mix it with Nitroflex, like a little bit of Nitroflex, to give me that pump while I'm trying to pump and also get them carbs in. So when you say that, you say like the carbs, I was like, yeah.
Honest to God, that's basically what I do myself. Is I have a carb and a nitric oxide booster, and that's all I need. And think I've been resting all day. You've done the same. You're not doing much on the day of the show, so hopefully some push-ups, some little bit of cable work or some little bit of band work will get your juices going there, and you'll have a nice pump to be on stage.
Mm-hmm. Now, how long? Like, okay, so if somebody get that pump, if they want to stay like that, because I know it's impossible to say that because your blood is pumped and stuff. But if they want to get that size in the future, like without being, because you have some people walk around, there's very few people who walk around and look like they pump, but they're not pumping. It's just how their body is. How is that? Is that from like massages, like you said, to get the nutrients in and the blood flowing through the muscles, or what?
Threefold. So first off, right, is always take a good off season to grow. Right, we know that. Don't keep competing show after show after show, year over year. You're going to look relatively the same. So take a good off season to grow. So obviously, after you cut down a year or two later, after taking 8 to 14 months off to grow, you're definitely going to look bigger. There's just no way around it. You never get smaller. Okay. The more you exercise, the harder you diet, you just keep getting better. That's what's great about this sport. You don't get worse. Okay. So that would be step one. Step two is absolutely, I'm huge on recovery. Okay. You can basically, and this is not the correct term, but you can have dead areas within your body to where blood flow is not the same as it used to be due to scar tissue, injury, consistent, basically pounding your body to grow in a sense, for lack of a better term. But what you want to do is, again, find ways to help increase that blood flow. It's the same as our recovery conversation. We talked about cupping. We talked about massage. We talked about Nu-X machines. We talked about different things that help re-stimulate those dead areas because you ultimately want that blood flow there. Now, some individuals, right, that walk around pumped all the time. Most of the time, I would say these individuals at that moment are on a higher carb diet than normal, right? Because when you're just on higher carbs, you can easily get a pump. I mean, how many of you guys watching this, right, have been low carbs and you go eat a cheeseburger loaded with a bunch of shit toppings? You go to the gym the next day and you look like a monster, right? It's basically because you just shocked your system with a ton of carbs. So if you're walking around more pumped than always, my guess looking at that individual say, hey, he or her are on a higher carb diet than they normally are.
Now, how do you avoid a spillover? Because people talk about this when they go to shows. People might they don't want to get too many carbs because they want to spill over. How do you know when you're about to spill over? And is there a way to correct it yourself when you're backstage from spilling over if you already spilled over?
Tough question. So the answer is yes and no. How do you know if you're going to spill over, right? Is basically math. You want to calculate your correct macronutrient and carbs that you need. You have to figure out what works for you. So there still is risk, and I always say it takes 2 to 4 shows to understand your body with your coach. And you might spill over the first or second time because the coach may look at you on Friday and you're as flat as a pancake, right? You have no lines, no fullness of your muscles. Coach says, go eat 400 grams of carbs, and then you completely spill over to where you don't see abs anymore. You're just washed out to where you have no lines, and it's counterproductive. So twofold. One is know your numbers. Don't you dare do trial and error. I mean, when I started in 2013, I didn't know my numbers. I'm just eating rice cakes, as many as I can, and praying that I look good, right? That was very haphazard, and that's how you fuck it up, guys. Like, there's no way around it. Know your numbers, hit your numbers, stick to your numbers, okay? Then, if you do want to carb load and say you do spill over, okay, in that very moment, if you're spilling over backstage eating rice cakes, or candy or whatever the hell you're eating, and you go on stage, there's not much you can do in that moment. Okay, there just really isn't. It is what it is. I was just at a show this past weekend, and I saw a guy spill over on stage, unfortunately, and he looked incredible. It just, the carbs dropped right when he was on stage, and it just washed him out, right? Nothing you can do. We've all been there. I've been there. You've been there. The top competitors in the world have been there. So unfortunately, there's just not much you can do, right? What I always say is, after that, if I see you spill over, usually there's a night show. Some shows go straight through. But if there's a night show, I always try to have them take a digestive enzyme, a probiotic, right? I have them have some water, even though you're trying to stay dry, to move those carbohydrates throughout the body where they need to be. And the digestive enzymes and probiotics will hopefully get those carbohydrates out of those areas into where they need to go, right? And I always ask for like just a real small workout, but burn a little bit of calories to get those carbs going. So, maybe 100 push-ups and maybe 50 standing squats. That's it, just to kind of get it going. And then take a little dandelion root, right? Or maybe a more of a diuretic to kind of help. And then in a night show, usually we can clean you up. But in that moment, when you're backstage and you spill over, there's not much we can do for you. Unfortunately, it is what it is. Go up there, have fun. Don't panic. Hit your poses. Do your best. But then we can usually clean you up before the night show.
Now, what about, like, you see on shows, some people do, like, they go out there and they just do like so many push-ups or so many everything. They just constantly trying to get pumped for like 20 or 30 minutes before they get on stage. And then you get on stage, they're like flat. Now, is there a way, is there a way to correct that for the night show?
To give recommendation on how to get pumped backstage, because we're all so different. I mean, I know guys that can just pose and they get pumped. I know guys that are doing push-ups right by the steps to get on the damn stage to get pumped, right? So getting your pump backstage you have to find that out. Your coach can't even tell you. It's really looking at yourself and knowing your body. Now, if you flatten out on stage, how do you get pumped for the night show? That's real easy. Carbs, lots. Know your numbers. Have a high amount of carbs. Like you said, it could be the carbolin powder, which is great. We know people where you're so flat, your chest just goes, your abs go, there's no lines in your back. They'll go out and eat a hamburger and French fries, really big starchy carb that can potentially fill you back up. So I'd rather be flat than spilled over. Being flat is easier to fix, especially all it requires is one simple thing, carbohydrates. You can fill it up and come back for the night show. The thing that's tough with a lot of these shows, though, as you guys know, most of them are prejudged in the morning, so you really got to hit in the morning. Now, some of the bigger shows, right, are live judged in the afternoon. Okay, so that's I like the live judging in the afternoon. I love when athletes have to hold it all day long. I find that to be just my personal preference. Is I want to see how you look twice, right? Let's see how you hold it. So, yep, simply if you're flat, right, after the morning, carbohydrates, period. That's the answer. And it could be more than you ever imagined. Like, you can eat a burger and still be flat. You're just so depleted, you may have to eat another. It's crazy. But I've seen people eat an entire pizza to finally fill out. I mean, I've seen it all. So that's a simple fix, Ernest.
Now, this a lot of sodium. Does that help in getting the pump, or reduce your sodium before the show, or get more sodium before the show?
Sodium backstage. I find it helpful. There is actually, I won't give too many secrets, but one of the he's a world champion. I'll just say that. Okay, he's a Masters world champion and he is an advocate of sodium backstage. I've watched him fill it up. He is one of the biggest backs I've ever seen in the natural world. We have lots of science behind that. Why? We know what sodium binds to. We know what it does to the muscle. We know it can fill you up. Other people, right? Salt is not beneficial to them. So that's just something that you got to kind of test the waters on. And what I always recommend, guys, if this is your first time competing, tell your coach you want to run like a mock peak week. If you plan on making lots of changes, some make lots of changes, some make no changes, excuse me. But if you're planning on making lots of changes, like adding salt when you normally wouldn't, loading carbs when you normally wouldn't, cutting water when you normally wouldn't, do that 3 to 4 weeks out before your first show so you can see how your body responds. We know you're not going to look stage ready, but you're going to know if you're bloated because you had too many carbs and you're spilling over. You're going to know if you're flat as a pancake, even though you're not 6% body fat, right? So always run a mock peak week 3 to 4 weeks out from your first show if you're going to make all these manipulations. Most coaches run a peak week, okay, where there's water, salt, carb, protein manipulations. Other coaches have you run straight through. You've already did everything you needed to do. No changes the week of peak week, right? It just really doesn't exist for them. So understand what your coach's methodology is. And then if so, most coaches won't say, hey, let's run a mock peak week. That's on you, athletes. Call your coach out. I want to do a peak week. I want to see how my body responds to all this crazy shit you got me doing to make sure, it works well. Now, if you're like Showtime, Marcus, Anderson, Murph, these guys doing 10, 20, 30 shows, they already know. They got it down to a science. There's not much you got to do. So once you get to that, professional level where you've competed 10, 20, 30 times, you don't have to do everything I'm saying. This is definitely really good information for an amateur, someone new into the industry, and maybe hopefully a couple pros can take some nuggets, like Murph did last week with the recovery stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the interview. And we'll see you next show.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, and good luck on your show you got this weekend.
California on Saturday. Looking forward to it.
Nice. Now, Dr. Josh Stoneking.